Welcome back. Today I'm talking about it all begins at home. Moses had been at Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. During that time, God explained the main laws, the 10 commandments. We find that in Exodus 20, plus many other laws concerning sacrifices that need to be made in order to keep the priests, the Levites, and the people holy. Now you'll find those laws and sacrifices and furniture and materials mentioned in Exodus chapters 21 to 31. Now Moses supernaturally remembered everything in great detail, and no doubt the scribes were put to work when he came down the mountain to put down in writing what he had been told. God revealed to Moses what we now know as the court of heaven. And he was instructed to build an exact replica of this court in the form of a 3-sectioned tabernacle where worship and sacrifices should be made. Now, of course, this was going to take some time. He had to select craftsmen and materials need to be made and gathered. But in the meantime, Moses needed to keep in close communion, fellowship with God, to learn about God's character, and he was on a steep learning curve. So in the meantime, a temporary meeting place was required. Now this is what Moses did, Exodus 33, 7 to 11, Amplified Bible. So Moses used to take his own tent and pitch it outside the camp, far away from the camp, and he called it the tent of meeting. And everyone who sought the Lord would go out to the temporary tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went to this tent, all the people would rise and stand, each at his tent door, and look at Moses as he entered his tent. Whenever Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand in the doorway of his tent, and the Lord would speak with Moses. When the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the tent door, all the people would rise and worship at their tent doors. And so the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as a man would speak to his friend. Moses greatly desired the presence of God's glory. He really wanted to know God. And for many months while the tabernacle was being built, Moses' home tent was where these meetings took place. Let's think about what we can learn from this. In this tent, Moses' tent, would you imagine that he had unclean things, idols and stuff like that he wasn't supposed to have? If the Lord went on a search in his tent, would he find things he shouldn't be there under his tent floor? No, I don't think so. Out of the question. Because Moses wanted a pure relationship with God. If he had those things, the cloud would not come down. Now let's go to the New Testament now. In the New Covenant, the Apostle Paul had charge over many groups of churches over the then known world. We've got details of such journeys that Paul made in the Acts of the Apostles. And we've also got the precious text copies of Paul's letters to these churches at Corinth and Ephesus and so on. Now, not only did Paul write to churches, he wrote personal letters to those with whom he was in close relationship. Letters to Timothy, Titus, Philemon, and in these letters we see his great affection and love for his spiritual sons. He related to these men just like Moses related to Joshua. So in Paul's first letter to Timothy, he gave clear guidelines that he needed to be applied when it came to choosing elders and leaders in the local church at Ephesus. And this is what he wrote, 1 Timothy 3, 4 to 7, the Amplified Bible. He must manage his own household well, keeping his children under control, with all dignity, keeping them respectful and well behaved. For if a man does not know how to manage his own household, how will he take care of the church of God? He must not be a new convert, so that he will not behave stupidly and become conceited by appointment to this high office, and fall into the same condemnation incurred by the devil for his arrogance and pride. And he must have a good reputation and be well thought of by those outside the church, so that he will not be discredited and fall into the devil's trap. Now, within our own ministry teams in DHMI, we have made it a priority to start teaching the foundations of faith. Those are the elementary doctrinal truths found in Hebrews 6, verses 1 and 2. Now, we follow that by practical training of a godly household. Our teaching staff have enthusiastically learnt and taught foundation of faith, but now it's a challenging hurdle for them to set up godly households where children are in order and wife is supportive and submissive, and there's regular food on the table, and debts are avoided, and utility bills are paid. Envelopes with emergency funds are set apart in case of medical needs. All of these are gradually being encouraged in order to establish godly households. And from these building blocks, churches and godly influence on local communities will grow. For all of us, if we want to experience the supernatural cloud of God's glory in our home, house churches or larger churches, house cleaning must be done seriously. I strongly advise in my book, which is called Setting Up a Godly Household, to give away your TV. It's a sewage stream of the spirit of the world polluting your atmosphere. The Holy Spirit has to come as a holy guest, and he needs to be made feeling comfortable. Moses created a welcoming atmosphere in his humble tent, and we will be well advised to create such an atmosphere in our own homes.